Good afternoon. Welcome to this Assa Abloy Academy virtual training session on bullet and blast resistant doors and frames, being conducted by our specialty door team. The session should last about 40 to 45 minutes. During the session, your lines will be muted. However, you can use the Q&A icon to submit questions as we go along. We will reserve time at the end to answer all of your questions. This session is also being recorded and will be available for you to view within a day or so. Within 24 hours, you will also receive an email showing your proof of attending this session that can be used to submit to your employer or to one of our industry association partners, such as DHI or ALOA for industry continuing education units. We do not issue formal certificates of completions for these short trainings. In addition, Assa Abloy Academy has over 50 online courses that are available to you at no cost. To get started, simply create an Assa Abloy Academy account and begin learning at your own pace. Let's turn things over to the specialty team. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Check and see if my associate Howard is on the call here. All right, so we are the Assa Abloy Specialty Products team. We handle the spec performance driven products. Today, we'll introduce you a quick introduction to the team. We'll talk about some tools out there, and then we'll do a deep dive on the bullet and blast resistance products. So the team, Howard Schreier is the general manager of the Assa Abloy Specialty Products division. And myself, I am Mark Stroh, technical services manager for the team. We do the R&D on these products. We handle the spec interpretation, the technical expertise, project management, and the research and development of future products. Our team is made up of several personnel, and we handle the products anywhere from estimating through project management and through the customer service experience. Today, we'll talk about some tools that you have available. We have quick quoting email repositories, forwarding those emails through to get directly to the team so they do not get lost in the transition of the information coming to our team. We have the similar thing for the orders so that your orders can come in and be handled in an expedited fashion so that there is no time lost sitting on somebody else's email address waiting for it to be forwarded. There's also quick quote forms to allow you to get quotes within 24 hours in Assa Abloy for these specialty products. Those links are available on Connect through your customer portals. We also have a technical support email repository out there for anyone from end user, architect, spec writer, sound consultants, customers, etc. These questions can be routed through our specialtyproducts.techsupport@assaabloy.com, and these questions again are answered in an expedited manner to get you assistance in whatever you need out there. Today we're going to do a deep dive on blast and bullet resistant applications. These are tested as assemblies. Today they're found in more and more market sectors throughout the United States, and really blast with the heightened security alerts out there in the United States and worldwide. We see them in petrochemical facilities, storage facilities, airports, courthouses, embassies, hospitals, schools, laboratories, and really just about any market sector out there will have some blast requirement at some portion of the building. The military, the Department of Defense, has what they call anti-terrorism force protection requirement out there. It is available in every branch of the military. This is a requirement of some level of blast resistance on buildings. There are some exclusions inside the UFC 4-0-0-01 standards, but for the most part, this is a blast requirement on your exterior assemblies of your building. The size being determined by standoff and explosive weight. We'll talk about that in a couple slides. Our blast assemblies, they are third-party tested, engineered. Hardware should always be available upon recommendations. Factory installed glass should come with your doors. Remember, these are tested assemblies, and therefore the glass is part of the assembly. Not only does the proper glass have to be in there, but the proper installation also needs to be adhered to in order for that blast to not blow that glass out of that door. In the frames also, you should be receiving glass from the door manufacturer. The proper glass that was used in the engineering calcs and or testing that was done on that assembly with proper installation instructions to put that glass in, again, to hold it from being blown through the frame in the event of an explosion. These doors are available in singles, pairs, visions, broad lights, transoms, basically just about any assembly out there that you're looking for. There's a blast resistance out there for you. There's 4 market sectors, really, if you take all the sectors and kind of compile them up. And that is the Department of Defense. That is a typical exterior application in a seated position, typically has 0% rebound. The VA, Veterans Administration, there's 2 levels of blast. There's a mission critical and a life safety. These can be seen as seated or unseated. Hardware has to hold on the rebound of these openings. Petrochemical, again, these are storage facilities, petrochemical sites. They can be seated or unseated. Fire rating capabilities is very commonly needed in addition to the blast resistance. And the hardware needs to hold upon rebound. The durations of these explosions are extended as compared to the Department of Defense. The ignition system is usually a gas or a liquid of some form, and that actually has a slower ignition than your common explosion in the Department of Defense, which would be a plastic explosive, TNT, etc. And then you've got the GSA, which is a wide variety of requirements out there. Really, they're determined on a job-by-job basis via the architect's specification and end users' requirements. All these products you're going to see seated, unseated are available. You see here on the slide deck the standards out there. You've got the ASTMs, the UFC 4010-01. There's also an 02. Both are covered. GSA standards, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and PIP STC 01018. That is actually the standard for petrochemical facilities. All right, we're going to talk about the post-blast performance. And the biggest thing that gets confused out there probably is that this is not the performance of the assembly during the blast. It's after the blast has happened. There's really 3 main categories out there that you should be focusing on. Category 1, 2, and 3. They're usually shown as Roman numerals. Category 1 is for a repeat blast. This would be in a case like a laboratory where you are running an experiment today, run an engine out of oil till it blows up, something like that. And then tomorrow you clean it up and you run another explosion. You don't want to be replacing that door every time you have an explosion. Another common place that we see this is in a subway station, for example, underground. You got that train running by, and every car that goes by has a pulsating blast on a door that may be on the side of the tunnel. And again, you want that door to stand up on repeat hits, if you will, on that blast. That would be a category 1. It's completely operable, fully elastic, and it can receive repeat hits. Category 2 is for incidental occurrences where explosion was not meant to be, but you want everyone on the safe side of that door to be protected. This is the door will receive significant damage, but will still be operable. This will prevent a man trap. So if an explosion goes off, people could still get through that assembly. The door is going to have to be replaced, or the frame, after the explosion, after the cleanup. However, you're not going to trap anyone in there, and it's going to protect everyone on the safe side of that explosion. And then category 3 is inoperable. That means the opening is severely damaged. It may come off the hinges. All hardware may be damaged. Hardware is allowed to actually fail on rebound. This is a common level in the Department of Defense. Those doors are swinging out of the building, and that explosion could rip that door off and throw it back out into the yard on the rebound pressures. That is the danger side of the door. Everyone on the inside is still safe. Again, fully replacement of that door and frame after the explosion. There's a category 4 out there. It's a catastrophic failure. It fails in rebound. The door does hang on to hinges, but there can be an energy wave that enters into the building. But you're going to probably prevent loss of life. There could be limb damage, people getting thrown around a little bit. So we don't refer to 4 very often. You will see some architects specify that. For our products, category 3 is really the minimum that you'd want to specify out. Okay, we're also going to talk about anchorage. Again, this is an assembly. When that energy wave hits the wall, hits the face of that door, you do not want that assembly to be pushed through and the whole door frame and everything end up into your safe side of the room. So anchorage becomes a very important part to this assembly. Your manufacturer should be notifying or identifying how many anchor locations, where they're located. Both are very important. The quantity, of course, the more bolts you have into the wall, for example, in this example we're showing you, the more shear strength you have of those bolts in unison. Also, the specific location of those anchors, above and below each hinge, above and below each strike, holding those areas of engagement between the door and frame. Very important. There are multiple types of anchors out there. Frames can be welded to embeds, bolt anchors. There are steel stud type applications. They are similar to what you're used to in the conventional hollow frame, probably more beefed up though. The gauges may be increased, the welds may not be spot welded, they may be arc welded, etc. So there are some manufacturing differences. So our caution is, don't pull a stock frame thinking that you're just going to put a blast door in that opening and have a blast assembly. That's just not how it works out there. You do need a complete assembly testing. There are certain terminologies that you may find inside the plans and or specifications that would cue you in that there is blast resistance required on this assembly. Those key terms, duration, peak pressure, standoff, charge weight, rebound, seated and unseated, and impulse. There is a list of the explanations here and the definitions of those words. We will be talking about those in the next coming slides. First of all, we're going to talk about standoff distance. This is how far away you are, that door opening is from the origin of the explosion. The closer that distance, the more damage is going to be done to that door. So if you can picture, if you have a firecracker in your fingertips and you have one laying on the desk, the one that's going to hurt you the worst is the one that's closest to you, the one in your fingers. So the closer that explosion gets to you or to that door opening, the more damage that's going to occur. Next, we'll talk about the charge weight. There are 3 weights out there, but really 2 are applicable to doors and frames. That's explosive weight 1 and explosive weight 2. Explosive weight 1 is what they relate to a vehicular explosion. It's something you would drive up to a building, not carry. Explosive weight 2 is a personnel type bomb. That could be a satchel, a backpack, briefcase, lunchbox, etc. Something you carry on your person up to the opening. And again, the size of the explosion is going to cause, again, more damage the bigger it is. So if you can imagine a stick of dynamite sticking out in one hand and a firecracker in the other, the dynamite's going to hurt worse, it's bigger. Okay, so these are very simplistic ideals, The complication comes when you start mixing the standoff and the charge weight. You can have a firecracker in your finger, but a stick of dynamite 2 miles away. Firecracker, although being the smaller explosion, it's going to hurt worse because the combination of charge weight and standoff. So it's very important to get both of those pieces of information gathered so that you can have the proper assembly on your project. Seated and unseated. This is, again, fairly self-explanatory. From the origin of the explosion, there's an energy wave that puts out and it hits that door frame. If it hits it on the pull side of the door, as shown on the top half of the slide here, it's considered a seated position. The energy wave seats the door into the frame. The frame is designed to catch the door. The door is designed not to fold through the frame, and together you have the complete protection. Hardware is minimal part of this assembly since the door and frame together alone carry that weight. In the unseated position, that energy wave hits the push side of the door, thus unseating the door from the frame or attempting to unseat the door from the frame. In this condition, hardware is 100% part of the application every single time. The hardware is actually holding that door in place. So again, the door is designed not to fold so much as to pull the lock bolt out of the strike, for example. The frame is designed to have that bolt not rip through the face of the frame. And then, of course, the hardware is designed not to shear. So again, it's just a little more complicated. That blast hardware, the hardware has to be tested to meet that same blast in the assembly. There are hybrids to blast and bullet both. In blast, for example, we see a lot of requirements out there in the southern U.S., in the Florida area, really, where you see hurricane and blast requirements. You may have a military base that requires blast due to the UFC 4-010-01 anti-terrorism force protection, but it may be next to the coast where you also need a hurricane requirement. So there are assemblies out there that will handle and be labeled with both a blast label and a hurricane label. So again, there are hybrids where you have multiple attributes coming together on one single assembly. We can add fire rating to that. We can have bullet and blast together. We can put stainless in there, et cetera, et cetera. You can continue to grow these hybrid assemblies as the job site needs. All right, we'll roll into bullet resistance. There are a couple key things that we'll talk about today in bullet. And really, it's really important to notice that carte blanche is really available in bullet. If it's really designed out there, it can be bullet resistance of some level. Again, it's important to know at what level that bullet resistance is. We'll talk about that in an upcoming slide. These doors and frames, similar to blast, come as assemblies where your glass is should be factory supplied and factory installed. Again, not only is the glass important enough to stop that bullet, the installation of that glass, the vision kit in your door, you don't want a bullet getting through your vision kit, hitting that edge of that glass where it's the most vulnerable and destroying that glass. You want that safety net basically left intact to give you the full protection. And again, in borrowed lights, what you see here on the picture as a transition window, you got dealer trays underneath, you got speaker ports in the glass. Those all have to be tested together as an assembly. That test actually puts a bullet underneath the glass to make sure it doesn't ricochet up and hit the teller on the other side. That speaker port's got to stop that bullet from going through. Full protection on the safe side of the road. These assemblies are available with fire ratings up to 90 minutes, and there are wood options out there also in the industry. Plastic laminate over hollow metal is another option to dress up that high-end performance, either in blast or bullet, to keep your building area looking less industrial, more warm and user-friendly, if you will. Okay, so there's 10 levels of bullet resistance in the UL 752 standards. UL 752 is the most common standard for construction. It should not be confused with fire rated UL standards. UL 752 is the bullet. If you have a fire rated and a bullet rated opening, you have two labels on that assembly. You have a fire rating, stands alone, bullet stands alone, although they can still be together in the same hybrid assembly. Okay. NIJ, National Institute of Justice, also has a standard out there. This, again, is very important not to confuse this with UL standards. We'll talk about that in an upcoming slide here. All these requirements meet the Homeland Security, Department of Defense, ATFP standards and regulations. Okay, these doors and frames are seamless. The glass, again, like we mentioned, is factory installed, and these can come in virtual any configuration out there. There's side lights, transoms, borrowed lights, as we mentioned, speaker ports, steel trays, fire ratings, and the hybrids that we've talked about. There are sound ratings with the bullets, and depending on what level of bullet resistance would tell you where you would max out on your sound ratings. We get a lot of questions out there where they're asking for too high of sound ratings versus the bullet rating. Remember, bullet is a life safety requirement. Sound is not. So we look at that like the bullet is a need and the sound is a want. Hold your bullet rating, get as high a sound rating as you can. All right, we mentioned that UL and NIJ have two different standards out there. This is very, very important to understand. The UL, which is the building construction, comes, grew up, born, raised in the construction, is the most common. You probably see it out there at 95 to 98% of the time. You're going to see UL 752. The NIJ, that standard was born more in the clothing industry. So if you order a bullet resistant vest or a bullet resistant helmet, they're going to come with an NIJ standard. The architects and end users who grew up kind of in that side of the business and then come across to construction, they may bring an NIJ standard into that building construction. So keep an eye on that. Why do we say that? The level 3 bullet resistant for UL 752 is 444 Magnum. That's a very big handgun for anybody that's not a shooter out there. A level 3 in NIJ, that's a 762. That's your hunting rifle. That's a 30-06 for, again, you non-shooters out there. You're bringing in rifles. The NIJ is typically identified as Roman numerals, where your UL is usually imperial number. So that'll be help to kind of cue you in what you're looking for there. But why the big focus on this? Your NIJ level 3 is probably 5 times the cost of a UL level 3. They're both level 3, but the cost can be up to 5 times the difference. So it's very, very important. Make sure you're identifying the standard. Either if you're writing a spec, get it in that spec. If you are asking for a quote, make sure you get the quote. We don't want anybody out there with a bad bid out on the street and having to eat that. That would be a not happy situation for everybody involved. The frames, as we talked about, they also have different constructions. Levels 1 through 3 are typically meet the armor levels by the construction of the frame itself. You will not see any additional armor inside that frame typically. So, it'll look to the common person, common installer, that it looks like a conventional frame, but it'll be heavier. Your gauges may be increased, your welds may be welded instead of spot welded, that kind of options. And in levels 4 through 10, as you get higher, there is armor starting to be added into that throat of that frame. So you're going to see some additional material in there. This question comes into play a lot where, can I put an electric, device in there, a strike in there? Can I run a raceway in there, et cetera? Those kind of questions. They can, and that armor can be backed up to, it would actually be located behind the harder box so that that complete box becomes protected. In both of these cases, if you're in a paired configuration, you'll need a mullion of some type. We offer removable hardware mullions out there. And they're not necessarily, I shouldn't call them hardware mullions. They usually come with the frame, so they're a hollow metal bullet resistant mullion. They can be removable. They are removable typically by bolts, not a keyed removal like you would see in a hardware mullion. So that's really the big difference. In addition, the weight. They're extremely heavy. So they're, again, carrying that extra armor, either in the material itself or within the throat of that mullion. So weight does become a factor. Vision kits. We talk about this. We mentioned it a couple of times. That vision kit has to protect the edge of the glass. In the testing, that is actually shot. I believe a door is shot. The last test we ran was 21 shots, just to make sure you get 3 in the heart of the door, 3 in the vision of the door, 3 in the kit, 3 between the door and frame, gap, if you will, the 1/8 inch gap that goes around. So by the time you're done, you're shooting it about 21 times. And 3 of those bullets are in this kit. And they're pinpointed exactly so that they will attempt to penetrate between the glass and the door. That penetration has to be protected. The glass has to be protected, the edge of that glass. So again, when you're ordering doors, bullet resistant doors, make sure the glass is factory installed, factory supplied, to make sure that you have a complete assembly. The difference of getting that all from the factory is the factory then carries the liability of that assembly. If you choose to purchase components separately, you are taking on that liability. And if that opening would ever fail, it's likely somebody would be hurt. And that's just not something that you want to do without a tested assembly supporting that opening. Again, there's wood doors available out there. There's not all 10 levels like we talked about. They have the common levels of UL 752, 1 through 8 out there, and they're available with wood veneers of pretty much any kind of wood veneer you want out there. Custom finish matching is available. There's flush doors, vision doors, etc. Again, the bullet trays, as we mentioned earlier, these are tested as part of the assembly. That bullet has to not ricochet underneath that glass to the safe side of the room. So there's typically 2 liners in there. And you can see in the picture in the end view down at the bottom there, the first one is for the bullet to actually penetrate, and the second one is to entrap that bullet so that it will not have fragments on the safe side of the opening. Again, this needs to be ordered with the frame, so that's factory installed to get all that construction in the sill properly aligned so that that complete tested assembly is maintained. Very similar with the speaker port, excuse me. It's constructed in such a way that the bullet will penetrate the first layer, but will be entrapped in the multiple layers within it, thus protecting against ricochet, safe side for any penetration. That glass, again, is factory cut to fit that speaker board. So again, order it all as an assembly. There are supporting documentation out there for all these assemblies. You will see installation instructions, hardware recommendations, maintenance instructions, troubleshooting guides, installation, storage, et cetera, et cetera. That's all available from your manufacturer so that you can have a complete safe project when you're all done installing. In today's world, we have domestic sourcing, common regulations out there. There's differences in where product can be manufactured and out of what material that product can be manufactured from. So it's very important to identify whether this is Buy America Act. If it's a Buy American Act, that little N on there really makes a difference on where a product can be manufactured. and can directly affect your pricing. Make sure that there are any trade agreements out there that might need to be followed. And again, there's American Iron and Steel out there. That would be your typical waterways. A federal dam, for example, probably has a AIS is how you're going to see it identified out there. So with that, I wrap up the training.
I finally made it, Mark.
There, congratulations, Howard. I'm done. So Tom, if you are we opening to questions? I don't see any comments.
Yeah. We are open for questions at this point. Please use the Q&A to type in the questions that you have.
Keep in mind to anybody that if you do have a question, if you're similar to me and the question comes to your mind 5 minutes after the presentation's over, we have those technical support systems out there. Just reach out to those and send your questions in, and we will get them answered to your satisfaction. Not seeing any questions come in.
Yeah. Howard, is there anything you wanted to, I know you had some technical difficulties. Did you want to add anything, Howard?
No, listen, I'm sure that Mark covered it, and especially with the sort of the deep dive into the products. I mean, and I seem to say this on every presentation I give with Mark, that there isn't anyone that knows as much technically about specialty products, I think, in the industry than Mark does. But, one thing that I always like to lean on, and I'm sure Mark already went through it, is just the tools that we can provide. So it's just as important as the product details, but the tools that we can provide in order to respond quicker to customers, get quotes back to customers quicker through our email repositories, through our QQF forms, and so forth. Those are areas that we are leaning on a lot these days. There's a lot going on. The world has somewhat opened up, and we've got our hands full. So in order to provide a much better response time, in addition to adding headcount to our team, and I'm sure Mark showed us basically the 20 individuals that make up our team. In addition to that, we're also creating a lot of tools for customers to help us and help you. So I'm sure Mark went through that, but that's still something that we really need to continue to utilize in order for again, quotes to be returned quicker, in order for orders to get to production quicker. There's a lot of tools that we have created, that we are continuing to create in order to ultimately get products shipped as quickly as humanly possible. So that's the only thing I would add, but I'm sure again, Mark had gone through that on the first few slides.
Thanks, Howard.
Thank you.
If there are no additional questions, we will go ahead and wrap up the session for today. I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to sit in on this session, and please reach out if you have any questions, and we hope to see you on a future call.
Great. Thank you all.
Everybody.